I 100% agree there is a gender gap in the finance space. I believe a lot of it's generational.
The flavor of our chat today is going to be females in finance and particularly around investing. Female says, I'm not good with numbers. So how do we shift that vulnerability and take it to almost personal accountability?
We need to open doors. And I think it's awesome that you're doing things like podcasts because we need to make financial education accessible for everyone.
Investing is risky. Not investing is risky. You choose which one's more riskier. What is holding people back?
Fear they're going to lose everything, isn't it? It's fear that, or they're going to fail. Most things are fear of failure.
Making decisions from abundance versus a decision from scarcity will lead to two very different outcomes.
I think being curious is a really good way of doing it. Everyone should do this. Male, female, other, is really understand your money story.
G'day everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Australian Property Investment Podcast. One of the big questions I often get, and this is going to be a shout out to ladies out there who come and have a chat to me about their finances. I'm going to put this on the table. I think far too many podcasts, particularly in the finance and property space, are heavily stacked towards male energy. And I think the women get left behind. I say that purely because my wife Bernadette tells me that as well. So this is me coming from a male angle. I've genuinely been looking for someone to come in that owns this space, that can talk to the dynamics between masculine and feminine energy. So this is something that you're struggling with, or this is something that's kind of crossed your mind. This episode is for you. We've brought someone in. As part of my research, I look far and wide for really, really good guests who bring a lot to the table. Amanda Thompson was featured in the AFR in a really, really good article, which I'll include the links to below as well. And it really caught my attention. Reached out to Amanda. You'll see to her credit and her character, she's a very giving person with her knowledge and insight. So, Amanda Thompson, welcome onto the podcast. How you doing?
Oh, I can leave now. You just made me sound awesome. Can we stop while I look good and sound good?
Hey, we've got plenty. Don't sell yourself short. Let me just give you a quick couple of points here in terms of who we're going toe to toe with today. A 3-time Ironman you've qualified 3 times. You've suffered a heart attack and single parent. This is enough on your plate, mate. So to then, persevere and push through your business, I gotta say kudos to you.
Thank you. It's all linked and learning experience, isn't it? It makes us more real. And if we can share our vulnerability, like why you do the podcast, then we're giving back to community.
Look, I love it. I think that's exactly what the ethos that we'd really try to embody, which is don't accept the status quo. Keep pushing yourself personally, professionally, property journey on all fronts as well. We need people that have kind of been there, done that, going ahead of us to go, hey, look, I know where you're at. I can see where you're at in your journey, but let me tell you the other side gets easier once you've had some traction and success as well, doesn't it?
Yeah. I think like anything, isn't it? We had this conversation. It's creating habits, but being able to adjust to life. What was the first things I said today? Life happens.
Exactly right. Hey, Amanda, the flavor of our chat today is going to be females in finance and particularly around investing. I'm very conscious that as a man sitting here, what do they call it? Mansplaining, I think, is the word for it. But I don't want to have a token conversation around gender and investing in property. I think there's a real femininity that comes with investing. And the reason why I want to kind of put this on the table here is femininity really gravitates towards stability, security, for example, a little bit of safety. Masculine energy really rewards action taking, risks, competitive behavior, for example. I'm not making these stereotypes. This is all the research that I've done leading into this. So I want to be very, very open about this. I'm not trying to offend anyone here, but I do think there is a role to play around biology and property investing and finances as well. What has been your experience?
I think you're right in that there are, I believe that we're all driven by fear. When we want to go and do something with money, whatever it is, male or female, we're driven by fear. But I think those characteristics that you just explained is the different parts of fear or the way people react to that feeling of fear. And so women will tend to retreat inward and want that safety, want that security, tend to be a bit more conservative because of the fear. Whereas men, that's that real, it's that caveman, oh, let's go get this done. I can fight this. I'm going to go forward. And so what we find when we, and I'm the same and through my career, is that we do well, I believe that we do need to speak or deliver different projections or the way we deliver our advice to males versus females. Yep. The other thing I think, and generational, yeah, and I want to say I 100% agree there is a gender gap in the finance space. Okay. But I believe a lot of it's generational. So what we're trying to do is change the generations that come, because we are still playing catch up from the generations before us where women weren't involved as much. Women stayed at home. Women weren't even allowed to work up until I think it was 1952 under the marriage ban. If they were married, they couldn't work. So if that's not that long ago, we're still playing catch up. So and what we want to do is try and change the narrative. And that is, if we have a couple sitting in front of us to give advice, the way we do it might change from what we did 10 years ago, because we probably were just talking to the male. Or we've got single females now that need to and should be wanting to go forward in their wealth creation journey.
Correct. I think you've absolutely smashed it right there, which is, this is such a fairly new phenomenon. When you go 50s, we're talking possibly 2 generations of females in your bloodline that have been working. And for a lot of our female cohort of clients, we're talking professionals who are on some good incomes, and potentially they're earning more than what their dad even has earned. And we're talking maybe under 40, under 45, for example, or even above. And so this creates a massive generational gap between what children are experiencing versus what their parents have experienced. Different property markets, different ways to invest, different levels of sophistication as well. You talk asset classes, whether that's property, shares, crypto. Some of our clients are into like wine and arts and other collectibles as well. And then there's this notion of, okay, well, you've got a lot of disposable income, and then the ability to, cars, holidays, and the other ways to spend as well. So how do we then, or I'm going to lean to you, how do you have conversations with your female clients that may differ compared to your male clients?
I try and be supportive, but I actually go and say, I'm not your best friend here. I'm not going to tell you what you want to hear. I need you to stand up and be accountable for your own financial future. That's the first thing. And then I will often spill some stats, which you've done really well. But fact is, I've just turned 49. So I'm 49 years old. I am supposed to, by all of the tables, outlive a man the same age as me by 6 years.
Wow.
Yeah. Yet I'm going to retire with less superannuation than that same equivalent man. So basically what it means is that I have to make less money go longer than a male. That's fact in this day and age. Women are more likely to take career breaks, not just for children, but for other reasons. And so I will say to my female clients, male or female, it's actually not too different in that I want everyone to put their personal goals in place. So that's where we start to find the differences between male and female needs or wants. So female goals will tend to be more family orientated, more safety orientated, more legacy orientated. And then we go down that path of saying, okay, let's connect the dots, and how do we do that financially? That's probably the main difference. And I think that more and more women are taking on this when you make it about emotions and feelings. So that's that feminine energy we're talking about. And there's nothing wrong with making financial advice emotional, because every decision we make financially is backed by an emotion one way or another.
I'm glad you said that, because I call BS on this so many times when people go, investing is purely rational, it's not emotional. Hang on, we're talking about money and we're talking about risk. How on earth can this not be emotional? Is some of them, I think that probably comes again from a male sales perspective, going, it's purely about the numbers and the return. And I'm sitting there going, mate, I'm very close to this. I do this daily, and yet I have my own hesitations and reservations around how to invest, how to structure things as well. I can only imagine and empathize with what this means for people outside finance, people that don't do this too regularly, and then even females who come into this fairly new and they're not the ones driving it as well.
And I think to carry on from that, I think more and more women as opposed to men. And again, I want to preface there's no judgment on either of our parts. I'm not judging male or female. It's just experience. Like attract like. I'm a single mum. I tend to attract single female clients because they probably feel comfortable or that I've been there and I understand how they feel. See? So they come to me because they feel as if I'm going to understand them because of the life experiences I've had. And so the other part of that is I will say to women, they'll say to me, I'm not good with numbers. It's something I hear all of the time. I'm not good with numbers, so I become embarrassed. I'm scared that I'm going to look silly. So there's the fear of talking to a financial professional and not being open because they're scared they're going to look silly or be shown to not have this financial acumen. And I call BS on that too. I've seen plenty of men who think that they've got financial acumen and they don't. And so it's this whole thing is who said that you have to be good at Excel spreadsheets or an accountant to have financial acumen? You don't. And it should be the financial professional, as in the you and I's of the world, that deliver that information in a way that our clients, male or female, absorb in the right way for them. And that's the other part of it. We've got to get women stop thinking they have to be perfect at everything or giving. So a part of being selfless, which is often, we had this conversation again, mothers in particular become very selfless. And then we start this whole be kind to ourselves, start doing things for yourself. Well, part of that should be let's take the paper bag off or let's dig ourselves out of the sand and start wherever it is we need to start because it all begins with a single step, doesn't it? We hear all of these quotes.
Yeah. So if we go back a step and you say, okay, female says, and I literally saw this in an email yesterday, I should frame it and put it up in the notes. I'm not good with numbers. It was her ex-husband that used to deal with all their finances as well. So she's like, I have no idea. So how do we shift that vulnerability and take it to almost personal accountability? Because that's quite a large gap to cover.
Yeah. We need to open doors. And I think it's awesome that you're doing things like podcasts because we need to make financial education accessible for everyone. Yeah. So I have a book out and that's not a spruik of it. I'm saying I've got a book out. So for $40, you can go and start your financial journey in your bedroom without having to talk to anyone and get some information. You can listen to podcasts like this. So we've got to in our industry provide these services somehow so that then their confidence levels to come and speak to us individually are there as opposed to being railroaded into it.
I think you've nailed it there, which is if someone came to us, regardless of gender, we're looking at your numbers going, these are your options that are available. Now, again, different learning styles. So take away gender, for example, and people have very different learning styles and email is a very hard way to explain concepts. Let's say, for example, taking equity out, paying your LMI, there's so many properties you can buy, or you take, this share portfolio in your world, for example, versus, and something that we get really, really good feedback from our team and our strategy delivery is there's a video that goes out explaining, like talking through the email. There can be a drawing sometimes on a whiteboard, for example. And I think visually, because we're dealing with an intangible product, i.e. money and equity and finances, you can't read an email and just go, I'm going to connect the dots. This is actually, you've got to read the pages, you've got to watch videos, listen to it. It's a 3D learning experience rather than simply reading an email and go, okay, I can understand the concept of borrowing capacity, assets, liabilities, leverage, equity. That just would, if before I was in finance, that would have gone over my head as well.
And it's scary, isn't it? It's scary when you don't know something. Think about having children, male, mother, father. And I use this example in finance all the time is that when we become parents, and anyone else I know, so when my siblings I've become an auntie, I'll say, listen to the advice that anyone wants to give you. Listen to their stories, more importantly, because advice normally comes through storytelling. And then you decide what advice you want to keep or not, what suits you. And you actually start to have an understanding of your beliefs. It's the same with money. The more information you can gather, then you will start to say, okay, I get this property thing. I get what an LVR is. I get how to manage risk, and whether I'm borrowing less or I've got more equity, however that works, there's a comfort factor in the knowledge, isn't there?
Absolutely. Absolutely. There's something that I pulled out from a lot of your copy as well. And as I did my research, there's one saying that really stood out to me. You have two choices: keep struggling with money or take control of it. How do you kind of Superman stance? How do you kind of dominate your money? Because I've got a saying that says, state of wallet equals state of mind. When your cash flow is strong, savings in the bank, there's a sleep at night factor there. The world spins better. When you're running too close to the bone, you're making, I guess, poorer decisions. Not literally poorer decisions, but you're making decisions from a place of lack or scarcity. So when you have that frame around people are struggling with money and this can continue to compound, even though people go on to earn more money, those issues compound even more because there's just more to play with, versus how do you take that control back over your money?
We've established I'm a bit of a sporty person, so I can put any analogy to sport as well. And there is no
a great leveler in terms of being able to explain it.
Yeah. So I believe that sleep test for everyone, number one. Yeah, sleep test doesn't mean you can't push the boundaries a little bit, because we don't know what we don't know either. So I think creating habits. So we had this conversation, and it's something that people say, you don't go and run a marathon. You may think you want to do a marathon. Your first training session is not going out and running 42.2 kilometers. You are going to cry all night and never want to touch foot to road ever again if you go and do that. What you do is you start slower and you actually start less distance. So it's the same thing with money. So there's two parts to this. So first thing is you just got to start, and you've got to start slowly. But then I'm going to change this a little bit around and say it's all about, like sport, the positive endorphins. Yeah. And so when we come to, I'll use two examples. The word budget, I don't use it. I don't like it. I was never good at discipline at school, still not good at someone telling me what to do. That's what the word budget says to me. Someone is going to point their finger at me and tell me what I need to cut back on or what I can or can't spend money on. So I changed that, and I think everyone should change that to a spending plan. What do you choose to spend money on? How do you create a surplus as opposed to restriction? So we're actually opening it up and saying, where do you want to be and how are you going to get there? As opposed to shut down. And the second thing is, my second example is, let's say a home loan. Yeah, we all know, the majority of us know that we will never miss home loan repayments, bad credit rating, all of these things. But we don't really see the value of that. When we first get a home loan, it doesn't go down that quickly, and it's a negative. Yeah. So we're coming from a negative. And so I think you've got to have that positive endorphins as well. So I feel like we need to do everything. A bit of everything doesn't hurt. It's the one thing, having eggs in a lot of different baskets. So your sleep test could be X amount of money sitting in the offset account of your mortgage, for example. Start slow. Start with what you know you can do. $50 a week. If it's $50 a week, all of a sudden you stop your review. If you've been doing that, you feel good. You've got that rush of energy because you've succeeded in something. You're going to challenge yourself. I'm going to try and do $70 now. And so you're slowly building up. And what we're doing is creating this rolling positive effect, as opposed to that I want to save 10 grand. How do I do it? And you don't ever start, because it's like, where am I going to get 10 grand from?
Oh, thank you. So I guess the heart here then is, okay, logically or rationally, I know we should be investing. Emotionally, there's an element of risk. I mean, investing is risky. Not investing is risky. You choose which one's more riskier based on, I guess, your risk appetite is what the banky word for it is. So again, strip away gender, what is holding people back? From your experience, what's the blockage here? Because I know from my experience what happens. From your perspective, what is that blockage for some people?
Fear they're going to lose everything, isn't it? It's the fear that, or they're going to fail. Most things are fear of failure. Yeah. And it's that whole, I was only speaking to someone the other day. I love the Michael Jordan quote that says, I miss 100% of the shots I don't take.
Yeah.
I love that quote. It's anything in life. And so we talk about this risk appetite, and this is where it becomes really individual, and you need to start slow, because if fear is holding you back, which it normally is, there's no use jumping into that freezing cold pool. Go lukewarm first and get used to, the ice bath concept. So start slow, get your information and speak to people. And it should be, I really do believe this, Aaron, is our job as the financial professionals to help guide and ease those nerves. We're not here just to point figures and go do this. We don't want AI to take over our businesses. We do not want AI to take away from what we can do best, and that is personal connection. So if you don't feel a personal connection with your financial professional, I call that you're with the wrong person, because you should be feeling comfortable with that person to start with. It's like no different than a doctor, isn't it? You go to a doctor. If you're not comfortable, you're not going to listen to whatever they tell you. Yeah. It'll go in one ear, out the other, and you'll still leave fearful.
And the part there is the onus then goes on you to then look for a second opinion. And I think that's the next part, which is you can throw your hands up and say all doctors are bad, or you can keep knocking on doors till you find the right doctor. I think there's a level of resourcefulness, there's a personal level of accountability. Go, just because one didn't work out doesn't mean they're all bad. You just haven't found the one that you clicked with as well. So if that's you, and you listen and you're being told no. And so many clients come to me going, my previous broker said no, or bank said no. I was like, do not take no for an answer. And that may even be from us. As I do not take no for an answer. Come back, push the boundaries and go, but why? And be curious. And it's, again, something that we'll do consistently, even with our own clients, when they've got the ability to go and buy 6, 7, 8 investment properties and they don't. I'm just out of curiosity. Why? Because in 10, 15 years, just like you said, Amanda, you'll regret the shots you didn't take. You don't want to look back and go, we had the opportunity, we missed out, and now you're dealing with regret. And I've done another podcast with my coach where we talk about that feeling of regret or resentment, for example, and you can't change like the ship, that ship has sailed, and now you'll look and move forward as well. So making decisions from abundance versus a decision from scarcity will lead to two very different outcomes. I can tell you that from personal experience as well.
I think being curious is a really good way of doing it. And I try, and I believe everyone should do this, male, female, other, is really understand your money story. And if you haven't already, probably getting a money coach on your podcast would be really cool. Someone that talks about that money mindset, is that our histories are all different. So the way we learnt to value or not value, abundance, scarcity, your history as a child and your experiences of watching money potentially, or if you had to work young and hand over all your money to your parents, that's going to develop a different mindset than someone who didn't even have to pay board until they were 30 or, things like that. So you've got to understand your own story. Then it's up to you to say, now I understand why I am the way I am. Do I want to stay there, or do I want to try and change this? So it's still an education process, isn't it? That you're just looking inward.
And you're taking one person, you put a couple together, and you're dealing with, again, legacy issues that I can't sugarcoat it. Talking about money is extremely uncomfortable. But when you think about coming together and merging your finances, if I was to do a merger with another business, the first thing that we'd be looking at, aside from cultural fit, is looking at our financials. And if you're coming together as a couple, I'm not saying make this a business relationship, but money is an element that you cannot hide from. If they were bad with their time management, you'd call that out. If we're not calling out bad with money, and we're going to kind of put our finances together and sweep things under the rug, you can only expect that things will exasperate until it gets to the point of, I guess, a breaking point or a moot point in a relationship, versus, hey, it might feel uncomfortable to have this discussion now, but we're better off ripping this Band-Aid rather than kind of letting it just linger and fester below the surface until, it hits the fan as well. So yeah, let's put that down as our money coaching session. We've probably dealt with it in our own relationships. And I think that's what gives us a level of empathy and understanding to go, mate, every couple goes through this. Why are we walking around pretending like it's not a thing?
When I deal with couples, I always make my couples go and do their goals separately. Don't sit there and do joint goals because you're not going to be completely honest. You know, husband or man, female, one partner, other partner, whatever it is, they're going to have different goals. What you hope for is when they come back with their list of their top 10 and sit there and share with each other, there's two things that will hopefully happen. You'll actually get a better understanding to what drives your partner when you talk about what your goals are and why it's important to them. And two, you hope that there's some common goals there. And then all of a sudden, what you're doing is coming with an understanding to then create a unified goal and a way to get that goal.
A little bit. I love it. I guess the next question here is most, and it's something that you've referenced as well. Most women are taught to be careful with money, to save, to cut back, and to play it safe. Now that again is I won't say playing a small game, it plays a safe game, which again, it kind of leads back into say that ability of security. I don't want to rock the boat financially. Yes, I could do it, but doesn't mean I have to do it. And I think this kind of permeates in conversations like the house, the owner occupied that they're in. It's like, we have to pay this off before we can invest, or I do not want to use the equity in my home to go and buy an investment property. This is dangerous. And I'm sitting here going, that is not dangerous. There is a safe way to invest. The equity in your house is there for a reason to go and, build a property portfolio, or even just buy one investment property. Yet it's somehow hardwired into one partner to go, this does not seem like a good idea. So if we're having these conversations, how do we, one, unpack it, two, dispel any myths that are coming up, because they are myths. I've got to be honest with you. Anyone that says using my house equity is dangerous, I've got to tell you, you're absolutely wrong. It would only become dangerous, one, is if you cross-securitize property, sold it for a loss, you'd have some financial implications. Two, an inability to repay the mortgage, which they generally go after your investment property first before they came after your home. And in that case, you've generally got bigger issues at play. If you can't pay your mortgage, it's either health or job security, and there's income protection, then there's trauma TPD for the other option as well. So there are ways to mitigate it, and I think sometimes that comes out as a lack of, again, maybe what you're saying is lack of understanding or awareness, playing out as fear as well. So I'd love to get your thoughts on this.
Oh, it's a hard one, isn't it? Because what I try to do when someone, it'd be like someone sitting cross-armed, you haven't got them. You want them to do this. I'm open to the conversation. So again, I think we need to take the onus on doing things differently. And we need to ask more questions of our clients. If they're shut down from this, chances are they probably don't even know why they're shut down from it. So well, I'd be throwing it back. Why? Why is it dangerous? So then what you're doing is in conversation dispelling the myths. Is this, why do you think it's dangerous? Oh, well, it's exactly what you said. It's not dangerous if we do this, this, or this. How does that feel? Again, I cannot stress more that it will come down to a feeling. How do you feel now? Not does that make sense? They're actually two completely different questions. So often we say, do you understand? Instead of, how does that make you feel? Do you feel any differently now I've explained something?
I love it. That's as almost a question then means your trusted advisor needs to be very comfortable with their own skin. I think you and I probably come across a lot in our industries where they project their own insecurities onto a client. Go, that sounds risky. Like I had someone come to me, got bounced from their broker going, that's awfully risky to go and buy that fourth investment property. I was like, that's actually the least risky thing to do. The other risky thing is just to sit here and like pay a 30-year mortgage and hope your job security is there. Like that doesn't make any sense to me. I guess I have a very different projection around risk and I see a bigger, brighter future for my clients sometimes than they see for themselves. I think you're probably the same, where you're going, we've seen the great investors and how they've taken action. It's not being silly. It's not being rash or hasty and going buying 10 properties in 1 year. It's a very measured approach. They're tactical about it. They've got a good team around them. Their mindset is locked in as well. So when you're comparing your great top tier clients, not by dollar value, but by outcome and attitude versus the low frequency clients, what differences do you start to see emerge?
Do you know, there's a perfect example, and I don't know when this podcast is going to air, so let's just disclose that we are recording this after the share market yesterday just got an absolute walloping. Yeah. And so my perfect example is this is the relationship we want with our clients. And I mean, it just happens to be my dad, who has taken, of all my clients, my dad has taken forever to get him to trust me in the space that I work in.
You're the worst client.
Huh? Yep. But he messaged me this morning. He said, I'm not going to look at my super. I said, good, don't. It was as simple as that. He knew he didn't want to. I've given him the okay, don't, because what benefit are we going to have looking at our super funds today after what happened yesterday? So there's a perfect example of we both client and provider need to know that any relationship takes time. Yeah, any relationship takes time. And so we should be open for conversations. We should be encouraging our clients to pose any question they want, because that's how we will build trust with them and rapport. Didn't exactly answer your question, but
I think you're spot on, because the building trust and rapport doesn't happen by, so let's say, for example, one podcast episode. It doesn't happen by watching one YouTube video or maybe reading your book. It takes time to develop as well. And I think, again, we go back to masculine, feminine, maybe yin and yang energy, which is guys are happy to knock down walls, ask questions, bang. And then, whereas I think the females maybe taking the slight back seat and going, okay. And then at some point, quietly, and then at that point, they'll put their hands up going, I'm not sure about this. And then it feels like, I often say this, it could feel like a handbrake. And it's like, well, hang on, why did we wait for so long to put the reservations or hesitations on the table, as opposed to waiting before it gets too far down the line to go, I'm not sure about this. And is that the journey that they needed to go on to then go, now I don't feel comfortable? Or how can they put this on the table early, that there's a level of discomfort here, that if we can just start to remove these blockages and questions will come up each step of the way, is that an easier way? And how do we, I guess, navigate that with our partner on board?
Yeah, so I think you're really posing the tough questions to me, because if I I am single, remember that. So what do I know about partnerships? No,
I get it.
Sorry, I have this conversation, storytelling, being open, listening, whichever side of the fence we're on. You will find, generally speaking, females go slower at that buying process. But we need to, and I do, much to a lot of my colleagues, Amanda, why do you do that? I open myself up to text, especially from my female clients, because I want them at any time they feel they want to ask a question, be able to ask a question. So I'll encourage that if you're feeling something, just text it to me. I may not get back to you straight away, but you've had the permission to be open. And I think that's what, especially with females, and we're talking mothers, we are, and I do, and sometimes I get so much backlash, but generally speaking, the mother is the carer of the children. Generally speaking, there's all of this data around how much time a mother takes caring, working, doing all of these things. So time is actually limited, and often it's sleep deprived, especially in the early years. So in a partnership or a relationship, we've got to be able to say, okay, just ask when you want to ask. Don't wait until the next meeting. Don't wait to this, because chances are it's or you go to my age and it's perimenopause and you've completely forgotten a day later. So if I don't ask the question yesterday, it's gone for another couple of weeks. And these are the things that women are dealing with. It's fact, yeah. And it is hormones are crazy, crazy things.
I'm glad we're saying it, because I mean, I could see this firsthand. There's a massive biology play here. And having seen Bernadette, pre-kids, plenty of bandwidth, for example, and then when that bandwidth changes, you talk sleep deprivation, you talk hormones, life priorities massively change as well. What was important before is now shifted and completely different. I think this conversation, we're going to do a deep dive later into rent investing in one of our other episodes, where There's a feeling of nesting and having that security that becomes important, that never existed pre-children, for example, and ability to put down roots. We want somewhere to raise our family. And that's, again, you talk about the sleep at night factor. We've seen it. I've been very open about our journey. The end of reinvesting for us was when we were, I think, 7 months pregnant, and we got the notice from our landlord to move. And it was like, that's it. We're done. Like no more renting at that point. We want to own our own home. And that, again, changed the trajectory of our lives as well, and all for the better.
And see, I would sit here, if you were my client, I would, at that point in time, I would ask more questions. So I would say, why? Why? Deep delve in. So again, what you're doing is uncovering that feeling, is that we do not want this newborn baby to have to move unless we choose to move. Chances are, and I'm putting words in your mouth now, but I mean,
we could actually, I could tell you right now. So if you go the 5 whys, for example, so yes, I don't want someone telling me when to move out. Why is that important? Because we want to be able to put down roots. We want stability and security for our family. Why is that important? Because Bernadette and I both grew up in our own homes, and we knew how important it was to be, walking distance to a school, like be part of a neighborhood. And we both had that as our childhoods, and we wanted that for our children as well. Why is that important? Well, we want our families to come over and feel comfortable. We knew when we rented that they just had that level of discomfort. They didn't want to stay over, for example, scared if someone spills a bottle of wine, whatever it is. It's like, this is our home, go nuts, make a mess. The next part, why? Well, we could choose to then renovate. We could choose to then add. We could choose to make memories in our own home. And at no point anyone's going to tell us to move, because the next part is we're busy enough. And if someone then comes along and says move, and then we have to try and find a rental, and I guarantee if you look at rentals in our area, there are nothing for rent. And that would upset our entire dynamic of having to move to a different suburb and having to restart building relationships and routines and rhythms as well. And when you've got kids, routine and rhythm is king.
And so to me, memories, you use the word memories. We're delving into a feeling. Yeah. And we would be gutted if we had to move. So there's a feeling that you're trying to avoid. So we've got 2 feelings. Memories is attached to love, isn't it? It's attached to family, love, legacy. So I go one step further with everything I do. See how I even go one step further is, what feeling are you chasing, or what feeling are you wanting to avoid completely? Then your whole body, mind, body, soul, and brain will say, I'm committed to whatever goal we've just set, because now you know how that feels.
I love it. Love it. This also becomes super important as you're listening to go, where you are in your life and your season is very different to someone else. I'm 40 something, married 2 kids, for example, run my own business. It is very different to some of our clients who are sub 25, renting or living with parents, and now buying investment properties. They are running a very different race, a very different style, different outcomes that we're looking for compared to where I am. I want to pay my mortgage off as quickly as possible. I want to build up a property portfolio that's diversified. I want to have shares. I want to have something for my 2 daughters. That's a very different mindset when it comes to investing. I'm going to be buying very different assets at a very different pace compared to someone that's, say, 27. So do not compare or compete where you are in your life to someone else at a different stage and different assets and means, for example. And I think that becomes really important is when you're trying to set your goals, whether that's, a lot of clients come to 150, 250 net passive income. You got different time frames, you got different constraints around that, i.e. your borrowing capacity and the properties that you can start to acquire. So I just want to double down on that, going, if you got value from that chat that Amanda and I have, and you got your partner, it's like, hey, we can just tic-tac a little bit back and forth around the whys. Why is this important? Why is this important? And the second that Bernie and I did that and got on the same page, presto, I can tell you right now, the alignment that happened, and you hear me say this, you cannot build a house off 2 different blueprints. You cannot build a financial future off 2 different blueprints. Challenge me on that, please. But I'm telling you right now, if I tried to build a house with 2 different floor plans, God knows what that would look like. Yeah. So, Amanda, for someone listening to this, and a good way to put a bow on it, particularly around your book that you've got, what would they get from reading your book potentially?
A lot of information, a lot of accessible, real information. And it's called Financially Fit Women. We had this giggle. I could have changed the color of the book and put Financially Fit Men. It was just that I wanted something that women felt comfortable doing. So it's, I've had plenty of men read it. I mean, there are some feminine traits in there because I'm a female writing it. But it takes you through the stages of life. I actually try and make it as simple as possible, and also to pick up at any stage of your life, and you can delve into any chapter further. So it's really designed to, we've got money for today, or your money stories. The first one, have this understanding of who you are. Money for today, money for tomorrow, money for retirement, money for, family, which is estate planning, superannuation, protecting your wealth. But it's kind of like an audit of your finances that you can follow this book and say, tick, that at this particular point in time is good for me, but the other two parts may not be. So it's kind of this step-by-step guide as well to what you should be looking at with all the different aspects of life and finances combined. So I feel like I've had people, it's something they'll buy for friends as opposed to give their copy, because it's one of those books that you just want to write in the columns. You want to circle, you want to highlight, so that you're actually making yourself accountable for what you're reading.
That's the beauty with a really good book. Like I've got a highlighter. I'm scratching them, dog earing pages, for example. A well-read book to me shouldn't be pristine. Like some of my books, I sit in the sauna sometimes and read it, and they're all crinkled pages. But I'm like, that's a sign that you've absorbed the information in a book. So, could I hit you up? Do you reckon we could get a few copies for some listeners? Would that be
100%? How many do we want? Let's go 5. Go for it.
5. So, if you're listening and you want to get a gift for your partner, for example, or you want a copy for yourself, hit us up with a DM. Let us know financially fit, and we'll get a few copies sent out from Amanda. And thank you for my copy as well. I should have brought that into the studio, but I had to read through it, and I want to say well done to you. I think one thing you just touched on there is, wills, succession planning, estate planning. Let me just tell you, I'm probably going to do an episode with Bernie about this. We did it recently. Good Lord, that took us months to do. I'm talking about power of attorney. I'm talking about what happens to me, what happens to Bernadette, what happens to our social media accounts, what happens to our business, what happens to our portfolio, what happens to our daughters, who takes care of them. And it's take away for the fact that it's very confronting. It's quite an intense, laborious process, isn't it?
True story. You've highlighted the fact that I did have a heart attack at a young age. I pride myself on being aligned with everything, and that snuck up on me not long after I'd separated from my husband. I'm the person that had the lawyer in an ICU changing my will right then and there, because I hadn't updated it. So I hadn't practiced what I preached. I was sick not long ago again, and I sent my power of attorneys to a couple of girlfriends because, my mum's still my power of attorney. She's getting older. People might question that. So the people that are important to me, I say, I'm still okay with my mum being my financial and medical power of attorney. Here's a copy of it. I'm okay with it. So they're a hard process, but I tell you what you're doing, and I've lived it with a lot of clients, you are protecting your loved ones by going down that estate planning path, because if something does happen to you, grief and money do not mix. They do not mix. I don't care. And then people can argue to the cows come home with me. I've seen it happen. You get to protect your loved ones from having to make decisions they shouldn't have to make.
I agree. The best saying that I got from my coach show days, clarity is kindness. And that goes, in the business sense, that goes for families. If you're clear, it's not being rude. It's being, this is exactly what I want. That is kind, because people aren't mind readers. Your family aren't mind readers. So if this is something you need to explore as part of getting your house in order, reach out to us. We've got heaps of professionals who can talk you through what I've done. Amanda's here to help as well. I know she's not farming or fishing for business. She's just sharing what she's, the knowledge and the experience that she's sitting on. So if you've loved this chat, and again, it's open up a conversation for maybe you and your partner, for example, or you and a friend, and you want to unpack it, share this episode. That's what we're really loving. The amount of people are sharing this episode with someone. It's opening up conversations and dialogue that and it's a conduit for that as well. To me, mission accomplished in what we're trying to achieve here is just having better conversations, particularly around investing, but also as you kind of look at the whole gamut of property investing or finances, this conversation sits nicely in there as well. So Amanda, I want to say thank you so much for coming on. Thanks for being generous with your book as well. If you do want to jump on Amanda's website, Endurance Financial, let me just tell you, when you jump on there, you think it's a life coach. I've got to tell you, honestly, it's so refreshing jumping onto your website as opposed to stock images on a beach, holding hands, as most financial planners have. what you've got there is real talk, and you've got some incredible articles and info on there. So check it out. Kudos to you, Amanda.
There is an article on there, I think, isn't there, on about females and how we should be. So there's are a couple of female-centric articles that I've written, and we've had a bit of a giggle at some of the backlash that I've got on them. Normally by men, because they don't like us talking about females all the time.
Are you getting attention, mate, when you're ruffling a few feathers? So some of the YouTube comments we get, I don't know. I think sometimes there could be better things to do, or channel that energy and go and do something productive with it. But yeah, that's kind of my 2 cents. Amanda, thank you very much for jumping on. Appreciate your time and energy, mate.
Thank you. I loved it. Right.
If you love that episode, like I said, share it with a friend, spread the word. And if you want to give us a subscribe, mate, happy to as well. That's a wrap for another episode of the Australian Property Investment Podcast. Talk to you soon.